What's good? It's your boy Fanon. I'm going to talk about Anthony Joshua versus Jarrell Big Baby Miller today. Now, for Anthony Joshua fans who can't, who only listen to the first couple sentences of a video or read the title and throw a fit, no need to do it on this one. I'm not dissing Anthony Joshua. I'm actually just going to talk as neutrally as I possibly can about the fact that more than likely Anthony Joshua is not going to do what Eddie Hearn said that he's going to do. He's not going to come to the United States to fight Big Baby Miller because he doesn't have to come to the United States to fight Big Baby Miller. But if he did come, I'm going to talk about what that really means for what has been said about Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn. Now, before I do that, please, thank you, subscribers, for coming back. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. And thank you to everybody that supports the channel. Now, here's what Eddie Hearn said when he was talking about Errol Spence Jr. and Mikey Garcia. I think this interview was on Fight Hype. After he said that Errol Spence Jr. and Mikey Garcia would probably wouldn't break 300,000 pay-per-views. He then started talking about how massive an American debut between Anthony Joshua and Jarrell Big Baby Miller would be. And I thought to myself, what are you talking about? Anthony Joshua versus Jarrell Big Baby Miller would not be nearly as big a fight as almost any fight that Anthony Joshua fights in the UK. I'm hard pressed to think of one of them. Jarrell Big Baby Miller does not have a following in the United States that's very significant. Anthony Joshua does not have a following in the United States that's very significant. And Anthony Joshua is now in a position, because of the relationship between DAZN and Matchroom Boxing in the United States and Sky, where Anthony Joshua is not going to become any bigger a name in the United States through what he does in the ring at the very least. And the reason I say that is he's not on television in the United States. He is on a app where most sports fans, and the vast majority, I would wage that 99% of the sport fans in the United States don't have the app. So he doesn't get, Anthony Joshua's name is not spreading in the American boxing community, in the American sports community. And it really wasn't that big to begin with, primarily because he fights in the afternoon. And people aren't really into watching boxing matches in the afternoon in the United States. He didn't win an Olympic gold medal for the United States. He won an Olympic gold medal for the UK. And it just kind of pans out in the numbers that he did on Showtime when he was there. I mean, the numbers that he did in the afternoons for Showtime were roughly equivalent to what Clarissa Shields does in the early evening. So it's just not very big. Having him come to the United States, it'd be very hard to, number one, that would have to be on free television or be on DAZN, because we know that's on DAZN. So that's coming out of an existing budget that you have, unless DAZN for some reason would decide to pay more money for that fight. I'm not privy to that information, but I'm just, I don't see a reason why they would do that. It seemed to me that they would be, especially since the fight has to happen. Well, I guess it doesn't have to happen in the afternoon, but if it does, for the pay-per-view in the UK, you're talking about a fight, Anthony Joshua fighting in the mid-morning against a fighter that's not very well known, not mid-morning, in the very late evening, early morning. I think it's 5 hours up from us. So you're talking about 2:00 in the morning Central Time, 3:00 in the morning, 3:00 in the morning Eastern Time. It just doesn't seem like a recipe for a lot of revenue. So either Eddie Hearn is really trying to sell Jarrell Miller's name and just use that sentence as a way to say something about Jarrell Miller, right? If that's the case, I could see that'd be a reason why he would want to throw that in there, because, he's got 3 American fighters that fight with him that are near the top of the sport. That is Demetrius Andrade, Daniel Jacobs, Jarrell Miller. They're all East Coast fighters too. So I think to the extent that he signed 3 fighters and he wants to put on fights out up northeast, those seem like, number one, they're fighters that you can assume are going to win most of their fights. And actually a couple of them, and Danny Jacobs and Demetrius Andrade, really have the chance to be the best of anybody in a particular weight class. Now, I'm not completely convinced that Oscar De La Hoya is going to put Canelo Alvarez in there with Daniel Jacobs or put him in there with Demetrius Andrade. I have not heard. Now, I know for sure that Canelo Alvarez's budget, the money for his fights, are separate from the Matchroom budget. I have to assume that means that they're also the contractual agreement that they have, the agreement that they have with Matchroom with Golden Boy is separate from the agreement that they have with DAZN. So, I mean, with Matchroom, Golden Boy, and let me say that again, Matchroom's agreement with DAZN and Golden Boy's agreement with DAZN, from what I understand, they're separate agreements. So there's no guarantee that Oscar De La Hoya is going to be willing to put Canelo Alvarez in with those guys. And Canelo Alvarez is already moved up to 168 pounds. I'll believe he's moving down when I see him move down. Not that I believe that, I'm a big Canelo Alvarez fan, so it's not like I'm saying I think that he's afraid of everybody, but, we'll see how that turns out with them. But as far as Jarrell Miller goes, Canelo Alvarez, Anthony Joshua versus Jarrell Miller in the United States. They mean that if he comes over to the United States and Jarrell Miller, that has to be like DAZN desperation or something. I'm already feeling as if the amount of money that DAZN gave to Canelo at $33 million a fight for 10 fights or 11 fights. That to me reeks of urgency, if not desperation, urgency. They wanted to make sure that they gave him a deal that without a doubt nobody else would be willing to beat. Because HBO and Showtime and ESPN were not going to give Canelo, we're not going to guarantee Canelo his cut of a major pay-per-view fight for 11 straight fights. I don't see him happening. So unless one or two things are true, one of these two things are true, I don't see that happening. Either the numbers over there with Anthony Joshua and that he's supposed to be making, that they say that they're making in the UK, either that's not true, right? And it wouldn't be such a huge loss in revenue because for whatever reason, the numbers aren't right. But if their numbers are right, they would have to be taking at least a 40% cut, at least a 40% cut over the lowest amount of revenue they've pulled in since the Charles Martin fight in order to make a Jarrell Big Baby Miller fight in the United States. So either, the zone is saying bring Anthony Joshua to the United States so that we can get him over in this market and we can start selling these tickets, selling these subscriptions along with what we're doing with Canelo Alvarez, and we get both these guys on in prime time, U.S. time. And then we allow you to, put the pay-per-view on Sky Sports. Unless they're doing that, man, I don't see it happening, man. I really don't. I really don't see it happening. So, but we'll see. We'll see what's going on, man. But again, man, that's not a huge fight in the United States. Jarrell Big Baby Miller versus Anthony Joshua is not a big fight in the United States. I don't believe that it would be. I think it would do very, very well in the UK. But I just don't see it happening, especially because of what I see happening with Anthony Joshua over the next couple of years. And this to me is regardless of whether or not Deontay Wilder fights Tyson Fury, beats Tyson Fury, or Tyson Fury beats Deontay Wilder. I don't see Anthony Joshua fight neither one of those guys. I think Anthony Joshua going through a series of mandatories, right? Because you can't. It appear I'm never a big. I don't trust sanctioning bodies. I believe those cats are full of a lot of they make a lot of questionable decisions. And my understanding, or what I think of commissions, and not necessarily commissions, but of the sanctioning bodies, the WBA, the WBC, the IBF, and the WBO, is that they really are there, dang near, for the promoters. And they're very, very flexible and willing to do what it is that promoters want them to do, as long as they can continue to generate those sanctioning fees for them. So, the mandatory defenses, when he has 3 belts, those can just keep coming around, because I do believe, and definitely in the WBC, I'll have to check in the other sanctioning bodies, that a lot of those guys say that you got to fight a mandatory every year. So if that's true, then, man, really, you could be, if they wanted to be, if all of them were enforcing them, Anthony Joshua could have fight 3 mandatories a year. And so he'll always have the ability to say, nah, I got my mandatory. Or, oh, they called my mandatory. I've got to defend this title, and not unify. Right? And that's kind of what I see happening, unless Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder get beat. For some reason, somehow, somebody beats, they lose to somebody that they believe, that Eddie Hearn and them guy believe is a safe bet for Anthony Joshua. That's the only way I see that happening. And that's regardless of how this fight with Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury turn out. But anyway, it is what it is, man. I ain't believing I'm not believing anything about Jarrell Miller or him come to the United States. But if he does come to the United States, it's either that he's got a lot of pressure from DAZN, or that money isn't like what they say it is in the UK, or both. So anyway, it is what it is. And with that, I'm out. Peace.